evening. I think we've got everybody here. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the third session. We're having a public session on discussion about voting methods. And the agendas and some of the handouts are on the table if you haven't received anything. Thank you, Mr. Spencer, for coming, and the audience again for coming. This is Mr. Jim Goodman will be our facilitator. He was the facilitator the last 2 times, and thank you for doing this again. And I'm going to turn the entire program over to him. Our council is here to listen, and that's our job. Jim will run the meeting, and he has some military assistants who will be able to make sure that our timing stays pretty tight, and he'll explain that process. But if you need anything in the meantime, please let us know. Jim? Yes.
Did you have some more full dedication?
You.
Thank you. Let's bow our heads in prayer, please. Our Father, my God in heaven, we come to Thee in prayer, and we thank You for such a beautiful day. And beyond that, we thank You for the opportunity to live in such a loving and great community, and for this opportunity to come and share ideas freely and in the spirit of love in our hearts. And we pray that as we go from this meeting, that things will have been said that need to be said, and feelings will be expressed that need to be expressed. And Father, we thank You at this time of the year for all of the blessings that we enjoy in life, and these things we ask in Thy most gracious name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Council, distinguished guests, and most importantly, citizens of St. Mary's. We are here for the third meeting considering district voting. A couple of housekeeping items, please. This section will include floors and windows. I've always wanted to do that. All right, listen. All right, cell phones on stun, please. Sort of like a funeral when the owl does that. Restrooms are over here to the left. It's a little better than where we had them right in front of everybody, so we have to walk up. And I said that, and then I had to do it myself. So here's what we will do. These are on-deck chairs. We already have a lady who came in expressing the need to leave in a hurry. And if you want to, while I'm making these comments, 2 more people can come forward and sit in these chairs. We want to do this to expedite the meeting so that we're not taking time for someone to walk all the way from the back of the room to get into position. Here's another reason. And I used this example last time. It seemed to work pretty good because the first time we had people who wanted to run them off. You ever been to the bank, drive up, tell a window, and the car in front of you has conducted what you know is every bit of the business they need to conduct because the carriage has come back and they've gotten everything out of it. They've been told goodbye, and they're sitting there, and they're sitting there, and they're probably balancing the checkbook for the last 40 months or whatever, and it's time for them to move on because you want to get up, have your turn. That's how this works. When your 3 minutes are up, at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Miss Marty Bailey over here, retired school teacher, that's almost like military, is going to give you 30 seconds. That doesn't mean that you've been talking for 30 seconds. It means that you have 30 seconds to bring it to a close. And then she'll hold up time, the red card. And then, if you're not on the way away from that podium, I'm going to be escorting the person next to stand right beside you and glare at you until you feel enough heat and pressure to move on. It's all very friendly, folks. We don't need to push anybody, but everybody needs to be heard. And this council has done a remarkable job of listening to people, and we want to keep that up. This is open to St. Mary's residents, voters, or voter eligibles in St. Mary's. You cannot be here by proxy. You cannot represent anyone else. You must be a resident of St. Mary's to speak at this meeting. You will have 3 minutes, as we said. We're still with 3 minutes. Mayor, thank you. And when you're through with that, if everyone in this room has spoken, if there is no one else on the on-deck chairs, you're welcome to come again and again and again, as long as we have time left on the 2-hour meeting, and as long as nobody else is waiting that has not spoken, you will have your time.
We will capture items that we don't address here tonight on what's called the parking lot board. Ms. Bailey will take care of that, and the council and the mayor will get back to you. This is not like the electoral forums where you had the opportunity to address individual members. The mayor will moderate responses from the council, but this is not the time for you to ask questions and do that. This is the time for you to say, this is where I feel about voting districts in this community. Anything else? All right. We have the first speaker that's ready. I think the microphone is on the board.
We're going to start with Mr.
You know something? I'm so glad you're sitting here because I didn't make notes. Where is Mr. Canning?
Right here.
Why are you hiding? All right, Mr. Canning is going to get up and keep you on the edge of your seat for the next 15 minutes. And he's going to explain to you a lot of research and things, and just try to contain yourselves, okay? Tom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to overlook you.
Just don't start the clock until Gene gets done with his thing. He's having some technical difficulties.
After somebody tapped the microphone.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
I'm just a mess up tonight. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. Why would tapping the mic just educate me, Gene?
We're getting some interference or something.
I don't think I did. Okay. Any questions about what I was trying to stumble my way through?
What did you do to the machine?
Say again?
What did you do to sabotage the machine?
What did I do to sabotage the machine? Now, do I look like the kind of guy that would sabotage anything? Yes? Oh. By mention, do you have any more meetings scheduled, Ms. Williams?
Yes, Monday night, 6:30 at the St. Mary's Welcome Center. And we expect to have a small enough crowd that we can all sit around the table and have more of a discussion format.
Okay. If you know what I'm talking about, Ms. Williams very graciously is hosting smaller meetings for people who feel intimidated by standing in front of the crowd and sabotaging electronic equipment. So, and you've had 2 of them already, and you've had 1 already.
We have one.
And again, the date is Monday night.
Monday night, the
At
8th,
At the 8th, at what time?
6:30.
6:30. Monday night, the 8th at 6:30. Gene, sing a song while you're doing it.
I'm a voice for newspaper, a face for radio.
You have great face for radio.
Yes.
A voice for newspaper.
I like it.
I am so sorry if I did that. I can't believe I did it because I tapped on the mic before, just to be sure. Thank you. I think you're just making an escape with that. Who is this thing on?
One of the studies take into my 15 minutes. There's a few fresh faces out there, and welcome. I'd like to make you aware that this presentation, along with the previous 2 presentations, which were video recorded, are available. So if you're interested in what your fellow citizens have said, it's available at stmarysvotes.weebly.com. Now, all of you should have a piece of paper that's a table there, and at the bottom of it, you'll see that address. So I'm just taking advantage of this to make sure you're aware that the video recordings of the last 2 meetings from start to finish are available at that site. So you can not only hear the questions of your neighbors tonight, but you can hear what was said at the other 2 meetings.
Tom, is there any way you can start your presentation without that PowerPoint? Or?
I can.
Yeah, I think he can catch up with you if you don't mind, please, sir, and then time.
Yeah. But yeah, your maps. We'll get them out there.
Do it the old-fashioned way.
Well, when we started, it was this afternoon, but good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Canning. I guess I ought to use this. Tom Canning, I live at 410 Point Peter Place in St. Mary's. I'm one of 10 actually members of a Get Out the Vote team. We're a grassroots operation, and this 10 members are all from St. Mary's, and we've been discussing a number of those. The team size has changed over a period of time, but we've been discussing this subject for well over 8 months, going on 10 months. Our Get Out the Vote team is comprised of citizens that share an interest in helping to improve voter turnout in our community. In addition to Get Out the Vote activities, for the past 10 months we have been studying and discussing how we in St. Mary's elect our city council, the effectiveness of at-large representation, and alternative voting systems. Today, in response to Representative Spencer's proposal to change St. Mary's from 1 district to 6 districts, we offer our analysis and findings for your consideration. Before I continue, I'd like to make 3 points clear. First, this presentation is not designed to promote a single voting system or conclusion. The objective of this presentation is to provide best available information to stimulate all sides of today's discussion. Second, as a result of the United States Supreme Court decision made in 2013, the U.S. Justice Department, the Attorney General of Georgia, and the Georgia Secretary of State are no longer required to rule on proposed changes to districting, annexation, and forms of government. So there's no preliminary review, legal review of a proposed change. When the change is proposed, and I'm sure Representative Spencer could give us more details on this, but eventually winds up as a House bill to be voted on. And lastly, third, Representative Spencer has stated that he will submit this or a similar district proposal with or without City Council approval if he thinks there is not enough local support. That's not an accusation. I think it's said in interest to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a question to be ignored. We, as citizens, if we want to take control of this question and in turn answer, we must voice our opinion. Otherwise. In this discussion, the first question we should ask ourselves is, do we need change? Do we need to change how we elect our city council? Do our city council representatives need to change how they keep in touch with the public, how they listen, and how they address our concerns and issues? And do we, the citizens of St. Mary's, need to change how we participate in our city government? During the next few minutes, we're going to review some terms, maps, and numbers that may help in today's discussion. As I continue, please refer to the table that you have in your hand there, and I'll explain it here in a moment. Just a minute.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
For God's sakes, don't touch that other microphone.
Well, I was going to use that.
Yeah, I think it's fine, but I'm not going near it.
I'm going to just turn that off for now, and I'll use the other one.
Okay.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay here? Right. Hello? Can you hear me okay without bending down too much?
Raise it up so you can get it up.
Okay, the intent of this sheet was to try to clarify and to summarize are today's conditions and conditions to see if the current proposal moves forward. On the left side of the table that you have in your hand, you see that there are 5 listed precincts. Those 5 precincts are geographic boundaries only for the purposes of voting. It has no impact on your city council members and how and who they represent, the area of responsibility. Matter of fact, in those 5 districts, at least 2 or 3 of those districts have unincorporated areas. So you have people who are county residents who vote in the same district you do. That's just a data point. It's not good or bad. It's just factual. I guess I take a moment to explain that because in some conversations, people don't properly differentiate between precinct and district. We, in fact, if you think about St. Mary's at large, we're only one district with 6 representatives. So that's where we stand today. The precincts, once again, is only a jurisdiction for dividing up the voters to go out and vote. But if they live within the city, they live within one district. As you can see in the 4th column, it says all registered voters. By precinct, those are the number of registered voters in each of the precincts. How significant is that? Probably not at all, other than it tells you a little bit about the population of that precinct, but it also tells you how active the people are in that precinct and how many are eligible to vote and do vote. In the center of the column where it says November 2014, those are the results of the last election. As you can see, there's a substantial difference in precinct 10, and I'll use precinct 14 as an example, or where there are 273 people in precinct 10 that voted and 1,322 in precinct 14. And lastly, and I don't need to go through all these numbers, I'm just trying to explain the matrix so you can use it at your own. If you have questions later on, I'll be glad to answer it, but it's just supposed to give you a breakdown of where the people are, how effective, how active they are in voting. And then the council members position, right now you have 2 council members that live in the south side in St. Mary's precinct 12 and 4 in the west side precinct 14. Once again, that's immaterial when it comes to the area that they represent. It just happens to be the precinct they're assigned to. Now, moving on to the right side, if we took these existing conditions and superimposed them into the proposed 6 districts, this is what you would see. You would see, as an example, in precinct number 11, which is Mary Lee Clark, the people in that precinct more than likely would continue to vote at that precinct. It may change, but if it does, it changes for other reasons. So if they continue to vote in that precinct, of the people in that precinct, of the 2,976 registered voters, they will be broken out into 4 separate and distinct districts by the proposed district. Okay. You can see that, so that's what the P means. If you look at the precinct number and then off to the right, you can see that district number 10 is actually, there's 3 different precincts represented there. Lastly on this point is if you look at the names in the individual boxes there, look at District 6 as an example. You have Mr. Colville, Ms. Williams, Mr. Gant, 3 of our current council members. Obviously, Mr. Gant just won this election. He's good to go for the next 4 years. If this district plan moves forward, then, which means election 2 years from now, the District 6, who has Mr. Gant living in there, is already filled. So a consequence of this, good or bad, however you see it, is that Mr. Colville and Mrs. Williams would not be able to run again because that position is already filled. Once again, I'm not trying to present bad news, good news, just consequences. We can go on more later. If you have questions later on, I'll be glad to talk to you about it. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, back to the script, which I'm sure some of you are very relieved. Where's the time? All right, let's go to the page. Sorry. Okay, on the left side, you see precinct numbers and names. This is just more of the same. I just wanted to point out to you that of our 5 districts, this is District 13, I'm sorry, precincts, thank you very much. This is precinct number 10, this is 11, this is 14, this is 12, this is 13. It's a little hard to tell, but there is some color differentiation there. Over here is St. Mary's by district, and you can see of the 6 districts, this district wraps around like this district is here. One of the common denominators of those 6 districts is they are all have the same population within 1%. They're all approximately 2,800 people. That doesn't mean 2,800 voters, men, women, children, 2,800 people by 2010 census data. Okay? So obviously, District 4, being as small as it is, it's a highly concentrated or densely populated area compared to District 6, which has a lot of marsh and not as densely populated. So just for the purposes of orientation, I take a moment on that. Okay, the race and ethnic balance in our city are displayed in this pie chart. These factors are required to be considered while developing reapportionment plans. They are required and they were considered. As you can see, and this is sort of a little bit of a consolidation, but this is census data from 2010. At that time, the population was estimated or counted at 17,121, and of that, 20% were black, 6% Hispanic and Latino, and the remainder was 74% of white and other. Now these are the terms and breakouts that's used by census data. Hopefully no one is offended. Whatever the politically correct terms are, those are the terms that are listed in those files. Okay, this chart here uses the same numbers, the same data, but it shows you what the breakout would look like if precincts were installed today. As you can see, the 6 precincts, 1 through 6, the population across the top is virtually the same, which is required by law. It's well within 1%.
Continue to say precinct. You want district there?
I wish you were up here on my shoulder whispering in my ear. Thank you very much. I'm at fault, and that does cause confusion. These are districts. Yes, sir.
Just to get it clear in my head, this is based on, this information you have over there is based on the chart that you showed, which is just a proposal. Setting up the districts is a whole nother ball of worms, right?
The proposed district, the answer to your question is yes. The proposed districts, this is what it would look like.
Right.
Whether that turns out to be the actual or not, but this is based on proposed. So, but the common thing between proposed and, let's say we go districts, the actual, one of the common things will be each district will have the same population. That's one of the driving requirements. So anyway, the colors you see there, the green, red, and blue, simply show the breakout of black, Hispanic, and white, and the numbers are down there on the bottom. So as you can see, all but 5 have a limited balance. They don't have a balance in those respective districts. No surprise, since 20% of our community is black and so much more is white. But in District 5, it is a little bit more in the balanced column. Almost 49, 51% there. So this chart here shows all registered voters. Now, I'm not going to try to differentiate today between active and inactive, but they are on the rolls as registered voters. And as you can see, there is a sizable, well, there's a drop, and obviously that drop has to do with the total population includes children. So these are registered voters, so it doesn't include children. That's one of the reasons why the numbers are lower. You can see that they vary to some degree, but the most significant one is back again at 5, where they have the lowest number of registered voters. And as you can see also, the balance, the racial balance is virtually the same, or imbalance, if you will, as all the other districts. Once again, these are just numerical facts based on the data presented. It's not intended to be good or bad. Okay. From this point forward, let's review the different voting models and the pros and cons of each. The at-large system we are currently have in St. Mary's is similar to what other smaller cities in Georgia use to govern. Overall, in Georgia, 73%, or 390 of the 536 Georgia cities elect their city representatives at large. Specific to St. Mary's, we have 6 posts with 1 council member per post. There is no jurisdiction or authority limits based on post designations. The only value of posts is that candidates select a post to choose who they run against. The winner must receive a simple majority of votes, which is 50% plus 1. If there are more than 2 candidates for the open seat or post, it's possible the runoff may be required. There are pros and cons of at-large post systems. This system allows for the largest possible pool of candidates. Since there's no resident limitation other than you live in St. Mary's, everyone's eligible to run. However, you may find that due to post alignments, you can only choose one of several preferred candidates running for the same post. You may find yourself in a position where there's a post 1 as an example, and there's 3 people running, and you like 2 of those really well. Obviously, you can only vote for 1 of them. Where in post 2, let's say there's also 3 candidates running there, and you don't like any of them, but you got to vote for 1. That's our existing post system. The at-large system without post may reduce one-on-one negative campaigning. However, without post, there is an increased chance for the need for runoff elections. Obviously, the larger the pool, if you have no differentiator except the number of votes, then it's possible that you're not going to be able to satisfy the simple majority requirement that we have right now of getting 50%. Regarding electing district council members, districts are more common in cities with larger populations. In Georgia, 20%, or 108 out of 536 cities, elect their city representatives by district. A district-specific council member is more easily recognized as an ombudsman, and campaigns can be less expensive for the candidate. However, districts limit the candidate pool and limits the voter to electing only 1 council member out of 6. Also, a district mentality in the council and with the voters can lead to fragmented priorities and delayed actions required for good city management. There are some cities that use the combination of at-large and district council members. However, this is the least common in Georgia. Only 7%, or 38, of the 536 Georgia cities elect their council by combination methodology. An example of this combination system is, as you can see here, this is just an example, 3 districts and 3 at-large representatives. The district candidates, of course, would have to reside within that district. The at-large candidate can reside anywhere within the city limits. The voters vote for 1 district candidate within their respective district, and the at-large candidate or candidates they choose from the at-large. So it certainly gets a little bit more complex and complicated. One of the reasons I suspect that so few cities actually use that. Some of the combination systems are a good compromise. Others see this mix as confusing, divisive, and the worst of both worlds, with no value to minority or other groups. Okay, we've briefly displayed the key data associated with our city's population and registered voters. We reviewed the pros and cons of voting alternatives used in Georgia. Now it's the time for you to vote, voice your opinion. The district proposal has been made. The question has been asked. The train is on the track. Before Mr. Spencer submits his proposal as a House bill in January, or whatever date he chooses, we, the citizens of St. Mary's, need to express our personal views and preferences. We need to inform our elected officials of whether we are ready for change in how we elect our city council members, either by the same or a modified at-large system, by districts, or by a combination of the two. If we do not take this question and action in hand, a decision may be made by those that do not live and work in our city. Thank you very much for your time. Now it's your turn. Thank you.
I'm the facilitator who's going to talk to me afterwards because I'm stealing his thunder. But Representative Spencer is here, and he's at our first session. He was able to come up and speak for about 5 minutes, and then I think I might ask, because this is the last session, and if you are able at the end of the session maybe to take some questions from the audience, informal or informal, would that be all right? So I didn't mean to catch up track on that, but if you want to come up and Jason, that'd be great.
Jason, do you want to use the stand-up mic or again? Right?
Yeah, I'll use that one.
And thank you again for coming. We appreciate it.
So I want to just go over, can y'all hear me? I want to go over the proposed map that I put out on behalf of concerned citizens. This map or rendition of it has sort of been sitting in my desk for about 2 years. When I first took office back in 2011, I've had several people sort of trickle over the years that we need districts in St. Mary's, and that was sort of during a debate around plurality and majority at the time when the city moved from a plurality system to a majority system. So, but that was never pursued. So as the years have sort of gone by, more and more citizens were concerned and came to me and felt like they needed a voice to have at least a proposal put on the table for a discussion. But there was really never sort of a good time to bring that out politically because there wasn't enough, in my opinion, I felt like there wasn't enough local concern to sort of bring this forward. So, but we had you guys just had an election, and that sort of became a campaign issue, and some citizens did come to me and asked to see if what I had proposed a couple years ago. And so what I did is I broke the city up into balanced and weighted districts. And if you look at, if you're able to get the document when you walked in on the table, when I sent a letter to the city council, and there are certain guidelines you have to follow to create a map. Mr. Canning explained those pretty well, I thought. But it sort of basically outlines why, when you draw a map to put in balanced and weighted districts, there are certain things you have to follow. You have to follow compliance with the Voters' Rights Act, and he mentioned that. Our U.S. and Georgia Constitution. You have to bring in mind ideas of compactness and what they call contiguity, if that's a bit hard word to say, but meaning that they want to make sure that the borders are good. But in a city like this, you have a crescent-shaped city, and you've got the base to negotiate, and you've got a lot of marsh. So St. Mary's, it looks like a crescent city. So the districts when you look at it, are kind of odd, but they are based on balanced and weighted districts. I did not, when I took this map into consideration, I did not take into consideration incumbency. That wasn't my goal here. Now, I have drawn a map to consider incumbency, but it looks hideous. You think that looks hideous? This one looks really hideous. So, but that would actually violate some of the guidelines that you have to follow, so you can't really do that. So we have to stick with the guidelines when you create a map that are with balanced and weighted districts. So obviously it's based on census. It's not based on number of registered voters. I even asked that legal question. Can you create such a map for proposed districts that would try to have even number of registered voters, you cannot do that. You only have to do it by population. Because the district voting is not a foreign concept. We do it at the congressional level, we do it at our state level, our county commissioners, or a district representation. You've got school board as well. I do represent another city in my district, the city of Waycross. They have about, I think, 12 or 14,000 people, and they have 5 district city commission. They call themselves a commission. So, and they're balanced and weighted, and that's what they've chosen what system they've chosen to do with their city. So that's basically the proposal. I brought this forward because there was a lot of discussion happening in the debate during the election. So people came to me and asked what I had on the table. So I brought that forward. Now we've had this discussion. I think it's been a great discussion so far. And a lot of information has been put out. So I think you guys will be able to make an informed decision. It certainly helps me to check the temperature of what really the folks want and what they don't want. So I just also want to clarify too that do I have the authority to do this without council's approval? Sure I do, but that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is hear what is being said, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about districts and a lot of bad things about districts. So that's what I've decided to do, and that's why I wanted to put this proposal on the table for the folks that came to me and asked me to do this for them, so that a discussion could be stimulated and had within the community. And I think that's been done, and I think we've had a very robust debate. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Please step to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
June Fisher, 200 Cardinal Circle West. I'm here to want to support the voting districts that we already have. And there's a couple of reasons why I feel so strong about this. Number one is our population. Number two is that, I've lived here for 10 years, and I've seen a lot of conflicts going on in the whole county. And it seems now we are just becoming a very unified voice. We're combining a lot of things together, and to me, this is just tearing apart everything that we've been trying to do for the last 10 years. The last thing is, I think a lot of you know that I'm very active in SCORE. And I deal with a lot of businesses. I deal with large businesses and small businesses. Businesses do not want to hear about our problems in our community. They want to know that we have a city government that's very strong and also very unified. So that's why I want to keep our districts as we have them today.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. We have another gentleman on deck.
Mayor Morrissey and City Council, citizens of St. Mary's, Representative Spencer, my name is Jim Harris. I live at 218 Osprey Circle in St. Mary's. My wife Betty and I have been residents there for over 10 years. I volunteer for SCORE, it was my boss June, and I volunteer for Get Out the Vote team with my other boss here, Tom, so I better be careful. One of the responsibilities I took on as a member of the team was to do some research as far as which form of city government was the best form to get out the vote. Now, we've had some of our residents have implied, or they assume, that districts might be the best form to get out the vote. But in my research, and I've documented here, and I'll give each one of you a list of the research, it invariably identifies at large is far better to get out the vote. And here in St. Mary's, that just makes sense, because if you think about it, when we do at large, our registered voters get to vote every 2 years for 3 candidates. That means 3 campaigns, 3 seasons of letters to the editor in debates and that sort of thing. If we're doing districts, our registered voter gets to vote every 4 years for just one candidate. So it stands to reason, not just the documentation confirms this, but at large definitely is better for getting out the vote. I do want to refer to one of the authors that I'm going to give you. His name is Professor Lawrence Southwick, and his article that appeared in Economics and Politics is entitled Local Government Spending and At-Large versus District Presentations. Do wards result in more pork? And what has not been mentioned to my knowledge is that when you have districts, it is not uncommon to have the district council members collaborate together to try to get more money for their district. And that also leads to sometimes vote trading, and budget fights are not uncommon. So that we've had many speakers that have been in favor of keeping our system, and I agree with all of their points. I'm not going to bore you with all of those, but I just want to make these that I am in support of keeping the system. We have one of the very best city councils we've had ever since I've been here. Why would we want to change and come up with another system? Thank you.
I'm Fred Dennison. I live at 112 Osprey Drive in Osprey Cove. I speak today because I was much concerned about the dissension within our city council when I first moved here. I lived in a small town for many years, and I was active in the community and in the council there. We had districts. Districts were hard to get people to come and run for city government. We many times had to go beg certain people to even come and make a statement they would like to be there. And I would not like to see that happen in our area. I think our city council is doing a great job. I've heard the comment that many people can't get into St. Mary's to campaign. If anybody ever wanted to campaign in St. Mary's, all I had to do was ask either a resident of St. Mary's or Osprey Cove, I'm sorry, and they would be more than happy to have a meeting held in Osprey Cove for you. And it's not uncommon that we have many of them. I've seen almost all of the council members in St. Mary's having meetings there and been to many of them. And so I find that the single district thing gives us a much more qualified group of candidates to have, and I think they're doing a great job. Thank you.
Next.
Chris Thurner, 202 West Bryant Street, St. Mary's. I'm in favor of maintaining the current system of at-large voting. I have several reasons for that, the most compelling of which I will address in just a moment. I am a firm believer in the role of our elected officials being to exercise their best judgment, study the facts, get constituent input, and do the right thing. For example, if I am unable to convince Mr. Spencer that he should support the current at-large system, he decides, exercising his best judgment, that he should propose a bill to the General Assembly for districts, then that's what he ought to do. The same thing applies to the city council. If I have one city council member from a district representing my interest directly, and I can't convince that council member to take my position on a given issue, so I don't know, building a dike around the St. Mary's River on the waterfront. If I can't convince that council member to take up my cause, I'm pretty much out of luck. But under the current at-large system, I've got five other council members that I can talk to. If I can convince 3 or 4 of them to agree with me, then I'm in. My position should carry the day before the council. Or at the very least, I can find one council member who will be a champion. Since I've got a little bit of time, the other reasons for my support for the current at-large system is, and this relates pretty much directly to what Jim Harris was talking about, the greater voter turnout. At the same time, you vote for 3 council members every 2 years. If you want to throw the rascals out, it's a lot easier to get a big turnover in city government with a concerted effort than I think it would be with a district system. My second reason is
Hold to the first one.
oh, you're at a loss for words. That's sad. I've never seen that.
That's up first.
I give up. Thank you.
That's all right, Chris, it is the senior center, I'm sure.
Mary White, 102 Sylvia's Court. If districts worked, they should work for 2 reasons. The first reason, and I've heard it mentioned before, is that if you have districts, you'll get more voter turnout. In my opinion, that's not the case. I've lived in cities where there has been districts. The only good voter turnout you get in those cities, even here in St. Mary's, even at large, is for national and state elections. Okay, national elections always big because you get a vote for the president or for the Senate or the House of Representatives. I'm sorry to say, state comes in second. City council comes in dead last. Nobody bothers to vote for the city council. I hate to say that, but it's true. The last voter turnout, some districts, proposed districts, was 11% turnout. So I don't think districts are going to be good for getting more voter turnout. The other reason I've heard is that they have good candidates that can't afford to run for city council. Well, that's not, in my opinion, that's not the case. If you have somebody in a city that's a good candidate for city council, they become well-known to the other citizens, and they fall in behind them to give them support for running for city council. So I don't think that's a good argument either. And finally, as I've stated before, I like to be able to go to any council member. If I go to one council member and I don't get the answer that I like, I can go to another council member, and hopefully I can convince more than that one council member to agree with me, so I get things changed the way I want them. And I don't live in Osprey Cove. That's the other thing I've heard, and this is a personal opinion, not necessarily in districts. I've heard it brought up at other meetings that there's a class war within St. Mary's between certain citizens and citizens of Osprey Cove. I don't live in Osprey Cove. Okay? I couldn't afford to live there if I wanted to. So anyway, I don't think, because in my opinion, the people of Osprey Cove have more intelligent and more means of communicating with the people and understanding the needs of what the citizens need. And I think that they would serve better at large rather than being formed into districts.
Good evening, and I want to say it is great to see a good crowd like we have here.
Name and address, please.
My name is Bill Creed. Most of the folks in here I know. I have lived here. I live at 613 Kingsway, and that's in Shadowlawn subdivision. I've been here since '93, and I've been active in everything that goes on in the county ever since I've been here. And at the last meeting, I stated my preference, and I'll state it again, and I'm going to be fairly short. As I stated in a previous session, I am for the present system St. Mary's uses for electing city council members. Since that last meeting, I have perused a 20-page review on 19 different methods to elect city council members. After going through that review, 19 different ways that they had in there to do it, I could find no review that fits our situation, St. Mary's situation, geographically or demographics any better than the system that we have right now. One of the things we always need to be concerned with when electing our council person is their competence to do the job. That means having the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience, and leadership ability. That means meeting with people and being able to communicate with them, listen to them, and understand what they're telling you. All of the above, we have the best election method that I can come up with, or that I came up with from reading all of this, and I recommend we keep a working system that we have got, we keep it in place. Thank you very much for your listening to my voice.
Mayor and Council, Representative Spencer, and fellow citizens.
Name and address, please.
Yep, my name is Mike Rich. I live at 152 Fairways Edge Drive. And I'd like to just go through a couple bullet points, if I may. Number one, I'm for the at-large system. And let's not get any confusion. It is a lawful and legal way to elect your city council representatives. And really, when you listen to what Tom said and you look at the numbers, how we elect, whether it's at large or district, isn't really the issue. Turnout is really the issue. Because if 30%, and those are the numbers, if 30% show up to vote, that means that 70% of the people have ceded the election to the voters. And as we've seen in our city council elections, fewer than 200 votes generally will decide an election. So out of 10,800 plus registered voters, and 3,354 actually voting, if a candidate can't find 200 votes in the remaining 7,500, then maybe that person shouldn't be a candidate for office. And the problem isn't geography, it's not Sugar Mill or Shadow Lawn or Osprey Cove. If you go to districts, low turnout really hurts, it doesn't help, because it then concentrates the power to elect the city council in the hands of a small, vocal, motivated minority, and in essence, you get fragmentation and you don't get a person who is answerable to the community, you get a person who's answerable to a wedge voting bloc. And why should a candidate only go door to door in the district where he lives? He should go door to door throughout the city, because when he's on council or she's on council, they have to vote for issues at large that affect the whole population. We would want our candidates to have broad support, not wedge support. District voting also doesn't require a candidate to be versed in all the issues for the city. It only requires that person to be interested in what he needs or she needs to get elected by a majority in that district. Simply put, I think that district voting is for the candidate who just isn't energetic enough to work for the office that they seek. We have strong leaders on our council now, and they have proven that the at-large system is the best method to assure a strong council and strong leaders for our community. And I urge you and urge the council to retain a voting, and urge Representative Spencer to be mindful of the comments that he's heard, and hopefully take that into account as you decide whether to propose a bill to the General Assembly. Thank you.
Alex Kearns, 902 Ann Street, St. Mary's, Georgia. Mr. Spencer has said that he initiated this because of the concerns of many people. Where are they?
Yeah.
I've been to these meetings. I haven't heard them. I think perhaps 3 people spoke in favor of districts at the first meeting. I was roaming around Facebook today, and I know a lot of you are on Facebook. 87 comments saying, please don't take the at-large system away. 1 comment supporting district voting. So where are these people? This is beginning to seem like some sort of odd tempest in a teapot. If they are so passionate about district voting, where are they? The other thing that really bothers me is that we talk a lot about the voice of democracy. I want my votes, and I want my time in the polling booth to mean as much as is humanly possible. If I happen to live in a district and the only person that's running is someone that I consider 100% jerk, what voice do I have? I want a voice that is going to reach every seat on council. I want people who are going to work as a unit to address St. Mary's. I don't care. I don't want to be measured or restrained by where I live. And I don't want anyone in my community to feel that same restraint. Right now, if I have a problem, I have 7 people I can talk to. And that's the way it should be. A cohesive body that is focused on St. Mary's as a whole. Not on which area should get this or which should get that or who should be listened to. That's counterproductive. That's a step backwards. And we've taken so many steps forward in the last few years. It would just be criminal to undo that.
Good evening. My name is Joe Antow. I live at 209 Osprey Circle. I am a member of Tom's Get Out the Vote team, and I am for keeping the system that we have. I'm going to try and use my 3 minutes to show you that what we have is working, and I'm going to come at it more from a diversity point of view. So that's my angle, and I'll make 3 points. So when the proposal for districts was made known to me, and I asked, so will Kingston be also be converted to districts? And I was told no, because Kingston has an African American as mayor, so they're okay. And I said, but doesn't that make the point that the at-large then is working for us all? Because it did bring that individual, a qualified individual, to be mayor of that city, and he is currently mayor, but is serving his 3rd term. So that was one point. A couple of elections ago, now I'm relatively new to St. Mary's. My wife and I moved here about 3 years ago. A couple of elections ago, Mr. Artie Jones, an African American, ran against Bob Nutter for a post in St. Mary's, and came within 4 votes of winning that election. So that's an extremely small number when you think about, I think there were like roughly 700 votes cast, that election could have gone either way. Again, making my point that the system we have is working for all. Thirdly, and my last point is, if you look at the history of both St. Mary's and Kingsland, St. Mary's has elected Mr. Williams to the council in our history, and we've got Mr. Roberts that was elected to council in St. Mary's under the at-large. Kingsland has Mr. Knight, I believe, that was elected to council, and of course I just mentioned the mayor. So again, making the point that the at-large system that we have today, from a diversity point of view, from a point of view that being a solution for all, I hope I've convinced you that all 3 of these points make it that the at-large works for all. But in addition to that, we've got a great council. I hear, because I've only been here, like I said, a short while, it's the best council that St. Mary's has ever had. And I'm saying, are you sure it's the best? But I worked with the council. I've attended their meetings. I've made application to get on one of the boards, wasn't selected. But again, I feel very confident that the right candidate with the right qualifications can be elected to the St. Mary City Council. Thank you very much.
My name's Dave Southern. I live at 277 Osprey Circle. And I also have been working on Tom's committee to get out. And as an offshoot of that, we have spent a lot of time researching and studying the differences between an at-large and the district voting systems. Because of that, I've come down squarely on the side of retaining the current system. But I have another factor that I think is critical that we think of here, and that's the timing of this whole thing. I mean, for several years now, there's been many individuals, many civic organizations, and even government boards and councils and authorities that have been working very hard to come together to focus on bringing Camden County out of its recent economic doldrums, and as a result, obviously make it a better place to live. And they've had success. They've had some tremendous success in improving services that provide for our safety and for the quality of life in Camden County. We're on the cusp of an economic expansion, the likes of which I think will rival the building of the Gilman Mill back in the 40s, and certainly Kings Bay submarine base in the 70s. And it's all because people have finally discovered that working together toward common goals is times better than building more and more silos, either corporate or governmental or personal. We have realized savings and improved services in a number of ways by combining government services where it makes economic sense without negatively impacting public safety. We've eliminated a lot of duplication, resulting in a focused approach to attract new businesses to Camden County. And now we have a joint development authority that is on the right track. Visit the North Center over in Kingsland and see for yourself how various authorities and agencies now simply walk back and forth between their offices. And they collaborate on projects that affect the entire community, rather than hide and protect ideas and possibilities from each other as in the old days. So this brings me back to why timing is critical right now. Here we are with all these possibilities at our fingertips, primarily because we finally figured out working together is much more effective than trying to fight over what? Money? Perceived power or influence? Political ideology? Services? Someone's ear? Resentment toward others in the community? Payback for losing an election? What? How is that kind of outdated nonsense going to contribute to making St. Mary's and Camden County better economically or in lifestyle? And now in the midst of finally seeing all these efforts over the last several years come to fruition, comes a proposal that can do nothing but cause division, anger, more resentment, and a return to the old earmark way of representation. Grab all you can for us, or we'll vote you out. It's absolutely the worst thing that could happen to St. Mary's right now.
Ambassador Tilty, Reading Street, St. Mary's. I spent several years in district voting long before Spencer came with the idea of implementing St. Mary's. And looking at it, the more I looked at it and pulled back the layers and diced it up, nothing about it appeals to me as a resident of St. Mary's. First and foremost, I like them to have 6 or 7 guys I can go to on any issue. Suppose you have one guy to go to, he won't turn your phone calls. You get 4 years to vote him out. 4 years, wait on the issue getting solved? No. We got the best council we've ever had in St. Mary's. By far the most approachable council in St. Mary's. You got a problem, call them, email them, they'll call you back. They'll meet with you. Breakfast, lunch, whatever. And I appreciate that. Let's say we go to district voting in St. Mary's. You take an area, say downtown. One person qualifies to run for downtown in that precinct if we're having district voting. That one guy's not who you want, but he gets it anyway. You got representation by default. What do you get? You got nothing. I'd rather have 6 guys or 7 guys than 1 guy I can't talk to. The system works great. Now, the problem we have in St. Mary's is not Osprey Cove or Shadowlawn or Cumberland Harbor. It's everywhere. It's Georgia. It's all the 50 states. People don't get out and vote. When you have 7,000, 8,000 people per election in St. Mary's that don't vote, that's a problem. What I do think this council should do is turn it to citizens to vote in a referendum in 2 years. Otherwise, it's never going to go away. The sniper is going to say, I didn't get my vote, I wasn't heard. Let the council make a decision on it. Let us vote on it in 2 years. Thank you.
Good evening, Representative Spencer and Mayor and council members. My name is Bill Bruce. I live at 304 Charleston Way in St. Mary's, which is not in Osprey Cove. I wanted to talk to you for just a moment about personal experience. I was fortunate enough in another state, that neighboring state of Tennessee, to be elected both to the House of Representatives and the state Senate. During my term, we had to handle redistricting of the state legislature, House and Senate, and redistricting of the U.S. Congress. And I'm here to tell you, there is nothing more contentious, there is nothing that brings out everything that is bad about politics than in the drawing of districts, because you have all this self-interest going on. You have people wanting to get an edge for themselves, on edge against somebody else, and you see if you can't accomplish that in drawing a district. Now I want you to take a look at the proposed districts here. These districts were drawn, according to Representative Spencer, to achieve primarily a population requirement. They were not drawn to achieve political ends. Look at what happened, even with no politics being involved. You have a district that makes this loop and includes 3 of the existing council people, 2 of whom would be out as of the next election if these districts became the law of the land. And I think it doesn't take any imagination to see what odd shapes you have. Representative Spencer called it hideous, and he's absolutely right. There is no redistricting plan that you can come up with that frankly is not in some sense going to be hideous. But we don't know that this is going to be the plan. This is a preliminary, tentative, proposed plan that may or may not become effective. That's a decision that will be made not by us, but by the state legislature. It also is something that will reoccur at a minimum of every 10 years when you have a new federal census. Then you have the 1 person, 1 vote requirement that kicks in. So all that has to be redone, and you go through all that exercise again. That's really what I had to say. The only thing I want to follow up with is I think we've got a cooperative, productive, constructive council. They're not perfect. They have differences of opinion, but they cooperate and work toward a unified end, which I think is to the benefit of all of us. And the final note is, if this system, if a district system is good for St. Mary's, why isn't it also good for Kingsland? We are sister cities. We have essentially the same problems, the same type of population. So thank you very much.
Going to turn the tides a little bit. My name is Artie Jones. I lived in St. Mary's downtown area for about 50 years. In the last 12 years, I've lived at Osprey Cove. For the last 14 years, I've lived at Osprey Cove. And the gentleman here, I can't think of his name, but you really hit the nail on the head. Several years ago, I was very, very upset with the city council and everybody that was involved, because they changed from from morality to plurality, and that was the biggest problem that I had. The problem that I see here in St. Mary's is not a problem that's going to go away. There's a lot of love. These 7 guys are probably the smartest and the best council that we've had since I've been in St. Mary's. And it's not because of anything that have to do with districts or anything else, because if I'm not mistaken, we've always ran at large. Right? I mean, they only had one small district that was cut out for the black population. That's not what I'm concerned about. My biggest concern was changing it, taking it away from plurality. And I don't know why they changed it at the time. They said it would save taxpayers money, and but that's the biggest lie that you can come up with. Because in that position, you would never, or very seldom ever, have a runoff. 2 times I ran for city council in St. Mary's. 1 time there was a dead tie. The second time I lost by 4 votes. What I'm trying to say is that the city of Kingsland, Woodbine, they have at-large voting, but they have a plurality rather than majority. We do have a fine group of people, and I think it's just a coincidence that we've had different people, so many people interested in the same thing, following the same situation. We've had, even the opponents that they've had were great people. We just have a better quality of people running now. And that's going to happen all over this state. So my thing is, if you can't have district, we need to go back to the way it was.
Go ahead, Mr. Ron.
Good evening, fellow citizens. I didn't intend to speak tonight. Just something that he beat me to it.
Name, please.
I'm sorry. That shows you. Senior citizen. My name is Eddie Rome. I live at 4312 Highway 40 East. I'm a lifelong resident, and I love the city and the people, and especially, as I've said for this council before, I enjoy them. The system we have has produced some good people this time, but it hasn't always been that way. If you've been here for a while, you know the type of people we've had to deal with prior to this council. So I don't believe it's so much the system as it is the people that are running. And some of the things I've heard being said, it contradicts itself, because we're saying, well, we don't want somebody from a one district area to throw a wrench in the works, because this provides a forum for that sort of thing. But there are folks who see it just the opposite. They feel that some other folk in a small group are running things, and they don't get a chance to participate. This is all perception. But I'm just going to take my 3 minutes and reiterate what I already just said. It's not so much that these other cities have the plurality system and it works, but I mean the at-large system, but the plurality is that what works. And that's what we feel. If we're going to keep this system, to institute that, again, to ensure that we will have a better opportunity to bring folk in who may not be from the right side of the tracks. And that's what I'm talking about when I've heard some of the things said. There was some type of inference that if you don't come from a certain segment of the city, you won't be able to handle the issues that come before city council. And I choose to differ from that, because it should not matter your station in life about the ability to lead once you're given the opportunity. And nobody steps into that job already qualified completely for it. You will learn as you go, but you do have a certain basic set of skills you need to have to come into that. And I think for the population of St. Mary's, we have a lot of people with that, and they don't come from a certain segment of the society. And I can vouch for that from my growing up here. I've seen folk all shapes and sizes that have come through my life that have shown me there's no monopoly on smartness, intelligence, or even evil. There's no monopoly by anyone. So I think we should have everybody given a chance to compete and compete fairly. And when I say fairly, I mean a system that does not automatically eliminate you as a winner before you even start the race. And that's why when I listened to everything everyone has said here, I said I was not going to get up and work. I was going to work on somebody. I told him that I had some more research to do, but I just couldn't stop because when he got up and he said that automatically hit the spot that I was going to bring up anyway about changing that system, not the wholesale. Now, I'm not the person that says because we had a Studebaker, we're not going to drive a nice 300 today because the Studebaker didn't work. We have to look at what we have today. We have to look forward, where this place is going, where the city is going, what we intend to do, what our goals are, not what our goals have been. My time.
Good evening. I'm Randy Adams, and I live at 114 Crane Island Circle in St. Mary's, the Shadowrun subdivision. And I was a member of the Get Out the Vote committee. I'm here to voice my own opinion. It's not the committee's opinion. And I have several just thoughts and questions running through my mind. So this is going to be kind of fragmented. How did we get to this point where we have to change a system that's working? I know that Mr. Spencer had citizens come to him saying that our present system did not suit them. How many citizens are we talking about? 10 people? 20 people? 1,000 people? We don't know. If it's a really small minority, then they need to convince us that the system needs to be changed. I'm not sure this is really the ethical way to promote change. Everyone should be involved. I haven't seen too many people who want to change come up and speak at this podium. Most of us want it to stay the way it is because it's working. Here's the prize. We have a good city council. So I'm having trouble figuring out why we even need to do this. I have one question for the city council. Where do we go from here? I don't even know what procedure to do as a citizen. Do I write individually to Atlanta and say, please don't pass this bill? Do I go to the governor? Do I go to Lincoln? I just don't even know how to handle all of it. And I'm not the only one that doesn't know what to do. We're doing fine. We've done better than we have in years. Why change? That's all I have to say.
Good evening, everyone. Keith Post, 111 4th Street, and I'm one of those troublemakers that was on before this illustrious group. So I speak with some experience serving on city government, and I want to address something that my friend Artie Jones mentioned back there. The council did not change plurality and majority. And we allowed the voters to do that based on some public input and public hearings and work sessions similar to this one that we held when it was forced on it. And Artie will remember this. I spoke against it. I was not for changing the system, but we let the voters decide. What we did do and did change to save money, which Artie mentioned, was we moved the voting times to the even years so that we would coincide with the governor's election and coincide with the presidential election. It wasn't so much to save money as it was hopefully to increase that voter turnout that was so low. The year I ran, I got the largest percentage of victory, if you will, percentage-wise, of anybody running in a four-person race with 4 candidates in one race, 3 in another, 3 in mine, and 2 in another. Mr. Howell beat Mr. Weaver by 8%. I beat my closest competitor by 15%. Doesn't matter, okay? I still won the election, but I was voted in by a minority of the people I represented because only 20% of the people came out to vote. If I had gotten 100% of the votes in that election, if I just wiped the floor with those other two guys, I would have still been voted in by a minority of the people of this city, which is the biggest problem we had. Mr. Rich addressed that and so on. That's the biggest problem we had. And since Mr. Spencer's here tonight, I want to address something that was in his article in the newspaper that I brought up at council, but he wasn't there to hear it. One of the things he mentioned in there was the poor folks in Gaines Davis, had they had some representation on there, they might have sewer and be able to flush their toilets by now. Well, I take exception to that because I am from Gaines Davis subdivision, and we are digging holes out there and breaking ground finally and moving that thing forward. But I didn't work hard on that project because I lived there. I worked hard on that project because it was the right thing to do for the city, just as it was as we worked equally as hard, if not harder, on the Cumberland Harbor project because those people that invested in our community and bought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property out there got left holding a bag by a developer that we couldn't, that we had a hard time getting money out of, and we finally got that resolved. But every member of my compatriots that was on the council with me, we worked equally as hard on that project as we did Gaines Davis. So I am strongly, if I'm not clear on what I'm saying, I am strongly opposed to changing the districts. Again, the biggest challenge we have is the voter turnout. If we can fix that problem, the sky's the limit. And I agree with most of what everybody else has said. I'm sorry I'm still not on council with this illustrious group because they're doing a great job. So thank you. You even got the plaque to prove it. I see that.
Mayor, Mr. Spencer, citizens. My name's Dave Schmitz, and I live at 112 New Hammock Circle in Shadowland. That is not in Osprey Cove. And it doesn't make any difference. There's good people in the entire city of St. Mary's. Because I'm going to rattle on, I want to say first, I'm opposed to changing. It was said earlier that District 5 is balanced. I don't understand that. The breakdown of groupings in the city is 74% white, 20% black, and 6% others. So if it was balanced, it should be 74%, 20%, and 6%, not almost 50%. So I disagree, unless I don't understand, I disagree that District 5 is balanced. And Ms. Adams threw an excellent question out there, and I do believe that the answer to her question is that our council here needs to pay attention, which they do. They need to listen, which they do. And we need, it would appear to me that the best way to keep this decision in our hands and take it out of Representative Spencer's hands is to have a resolution and for the citizens to vote. Thank you.
Any other presenters? Thank you. Anyone else, please make your way through the all-neck chairs.
Tanya Blazebrook, 308 Osprey Circle. I'm a relative newcomer to the area, and I spent a lot of time with Tom's Get Out the Vote group and the subcommittee working the last 8 months on looking at alternative methods. And Bill Creed's right. There's a booklet of 20 different alternatives that we could look at. And while I'm a big supporter of districts in large metropolitan communities that I've lived in, Los Angeles, Miami, San Francisco, Boston, it works well there because you have large ethnic groups that are concentrated and need some kind of representation. But I haven't found that in smaller communities. But my real question, and I think it's been touched on a couple of times, and I guess Representative Spencer, you're the only one that can answer that. I'm not sure what the threshold is. I don't know whether it's, as Rini said, 5 people or 50 people or 500 or 40% of the voters. You said citizens and concerned citizens and several people. What is the threshold of the number of people, number of citizens that need to come to you to get something in legislation? I mean, if I came to you and said, I have a better plan, I think that one of these plans that Bill's talked about, Plan X, is perfect for St. Mary's. How many of my friends and colleagues do I need to get together to come to you and say, would you pass legislation for Plan X? Is there a threshold? Because this state doesn't have petitions that you sign, right? Where you say at least 20% of the voters have to sign a petition. So is there a threshold, sir? Can you help me with that? Is there a number?
You want me to answer that now?
If you don't mind.
Well, I think the things like we're doing right now, having public discussion, is what I use to sort of gauge my decision and how I move forward. So I hear a lot of yeses today to keep the current system. So, but I do have to respect the wishes of those that want to change the system, because I also represent them too.
Oh, you have a difficult job.
And I happen to actually be sympathetic to their issue. But I also have to be mindful of the fact that does the city as a whole, is this a good thing for them? I still have to make that decision myself. That's the threshold. There's nothing you can find in law that determines the threshold. It's a judgment call. That's why we elect our elected officials.
So that there's not a number specific. So if I came up with a plan,
if
I had 100 people that came,
if you came up with a plan that was viable, that many agreed on, not everybody can agree on the plan, not everybody agrees on this plan.
Right.
But if there was enough talk and discussion about it that helped me make a decision, then I would consider the plan. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Candy DeLoe, 702 Cinnamon Fern Trail. I hope this comes out the right way. I'd like to talk a little bit about this plurality and majority and referendums. That passed on a referendum with a low voter turnout. And my concern is if we put this to a referendum and we have a low voter turnout, it's probably going to be voted in. People will make districts sound good and enough people will come out. Because enough people came out because they thought majority sounded like the best way. Although I personally voted for plurality, I wanted to keep it the way it was. I thought that gave more people an opportunity to get elected. And if we send this to a referendum and they drag people out of the woodwork to vote, I'm concerned that the referendum to go to districts will pass and we'll be stuck with it. And I also want to know what the rush is. Why the bill has to be dropped this year. There's so many questions and so many good points being made by so many people here tonight. I don't see why we have to rush into anything like this.
Any other speakers, please? Anyone who wants to approach the voting room for a second time? Thank you, Tom.
Tom Canning, 410 Point Peter Place. I think as you noticed, a number of our individual team members came up today, and I want to thank them very much for holding back their individual comments until tonight, which is the last of our 3 sessions, public sessions. We did try very hard to present a centerline perspective and set of information. But like the majority of our team members, I'm also in favor of the at-large system. I will tell you that a couple of points that individuals have made here recently are significant to us as team members that were researching it, because we felt, as late as yesterday, that it was necessary for us to come to consensus as a team because we were facing this unknown deadline. We were facing this cloud that we had no control over. And we were afraid if we continued on with our the pace that we were maintaining. Our original intent was to thoroughly research it, make the public aware of the alternatives, try to figure out what was the best received, and then go through an education process, et cetera, with the idea that maybe at large is the right answer, but a variation of what we have may be even better. So, but we weren't predisposed that at large was the right answer. We were looking for the best system. So I guess the point is, before I lose my time here, is that the team spent a lot of time working on this subject, but as long as we did spend on this, a lot of individuals did spend a lot of research. Our holiday season and vacation period, so we weren't maybe as effective as we would like to be. Our goal was to start presenting our case after the first of the year. We really feel that we've been rushed on this subject. We really haven't done what we originally intended to do, but we feel it's necessary to come forward with a position, with a consensus, something that we can live with in defense of what appears to be an alternative that's being put on the table, vote up or vote down. I would personally like to see that removed from the table and allow the citizens of St. Mary's to continue to evaluate the best proposal and then maybe come back to you and of course the city council and say, look, we've looked at it real hard and we do think that, and let's granted, that large is better, but a slight modification at large of these 19 or 20 systems plus would even be a better system. But I don't think our team isn't ready to do that. So, thank you.
Mr. Spencer, Mayor, Council, my name is Charlie Smith. I live at 310 West St. Mary's Street, downtown St. Mary's, and it's a treat for me to participate in this wonderful forum tonight. I've heard so many great proposals and ideas shared tonight that, I should have bought a ticket or paid to get in here tonight. Thank you all for your sharing. I just have a couple of things. I was asked a few weeks ago to write an editorial for the Tribune and Georgian, in which I tried to lay out 10 what I thought were compelling reasons why we should support the at-large method of electing city officials in St. Mary's. Following that, I continued to do a little bit of research on trying to document the actual experience that small cities have using the district method. And I learned consistently, as much as I could uncover, that once a candidate for a district is elected, their re-election in these small cities is almost automatic. Better qualified candidates are reluctant to run, to challenge neighbors. Interest in city government really begins to wane. To try to see if we've had any experience similar to that closer to home, I decided to call Dr. Will Harden, who today is in Atlanta with 3 of his board members. And I emailed him this question. I said, Dr. Harden, how often are sitting board members on the school board challenged for re-election in their district? The school system uses the district method for electing their representatives. One of the members there in the conversation had served on the school board for 20 years. Another had been employed by the school system for over 30 years. Now here's the response, and I quote, although we are relying only on memory, none of us can recall an incumbent board member ever facing opposition. I can say definitely that for the last 15 years, there has not been opposition to a sitting board member during an election. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose that voting by districts for city council in St. Mary's can have tragic consequences at a time when our city is making such significant progress. Please retain the at-large system.
Any other speakers, please? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just, as Jim said, you can come back if you'd like, and just come up to the podium and speak if you'd like, but if, I think if we've gotten to this point in the program, Mr. Spencer said he would take some questions, and I think respectfully, we had 10 minutes, we wanted to do that, or as long as you want to. If people want to ask that question, if you're comfortable to do that, we can do that. This was not in the program, so we're doing a little ad hoc, if that's all right, but we're nothing if not flexible, right, counsel? But if you'd like to come up, Representative Spencer, again, thank you for what you're doing. And if anybody does have a question, and I think 10 minutes, all right? Okay.
Mayor, excuse me. Mr. Glasser had a question.
Do you need a speaker?
Here, this might help. All right, Jason, where we go from here? Let's say this council next month, next week, next year passes and votes down the referendum on district voting. What do you do from there?
Well, I think that would send a clear signal that the community is probably not wanting to do this as a whole. But I feel like that's probably not a good way to go about it, because there's going to be a few citizens that are going to be somewhat feel like they've been disenfranchised by that decision.
So now,
but I do feel
pause
like
that for a minute. Now, why is it now? Last year, when we wanted to do revote powers, it was imperative this council, the city council here, make it unanimous for you to introduce it on the floor under local legislation. Now, this council might vote it down, who knows? But you're going to take upon yourself to go around whatever the wishes are to do what you think is best for St. Mary's.
Well, that was a tax issue, a tax policy issue, and I've always been. It's always been my policy that anything that deals with tax-related issues that I would require unanimous vote from any local government or county government that I represent. That's always been my policy.
So now why?
And I've never changed that because it's a tax issue.
So now why are you going back to St. Mary's and not Kingston?
Because people didn't come to me about this issue in Kingston. That's why.
Sir, could you give us some idea of how many people came to you about this issue?
I'd say over a few years, since this issue sort of been brewing, I'd say about 20 or so people, give or take over a few years. And then as the debate on the issue has sort of come up during the election, it got a little bit more during that
So
time.
we're talking maybe 25, 30 people over the course of a few years.
I'd say about 20, 25.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just a little bit more clarification, Linda Victory.
Thank you.
You say 2025 over several years.
Since I've been in office.
Since you've been in office.
It's sort of gotten steadier as we've gotten closer.
Or is it 2025, is it 4 people that have come back 5 times? Or
sometimes.
Okay, so I mean, are we talking about 6 individuals over 8 period of time, or are we talking about 25 people?
I know recently I've met with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 people recently, since this recent debate about the issue has come up. So
you
yes.
up to 10 people since this started about a month and a half ago.
I'd say close to that, probably about 10 people.
Okay. Are they here?
I'd say about 2 of them are here.
No. Well, I'm going to go back to the original question, Jason. If
I'm sorry. Complete your sentence.
Okay, thank you. If the city of St. Mary's, all this discussion that we've had, and we've had terrific discussion, it's one of the things that you have brought forward here, has caused this community to come together and to discuss that. For that, you should be applauded. But if the city of St. Mary's, and we hear here that the neighbors or the people, the residents, we're not for this change. We don't want this change. The majority, you're always going to have disenfranchised, Jason, you know that. So, if the majority do not want the change, are you saying that you may go ahead and drop the bill anyway?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying,
That's all.
what I'm saying is, I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I have to be mindful of those that want the other side of the system. So I guess for me, I think the best policy at this point would be to bring it to a vote. That would be what I'm hearing after the.
I don't think you're hearing that. I think
Well,
you're hearing that.
I think that would be the best policy to move
For
forward on
you.
that. Well, because this issue is going to come back even if I don't do anything this year. It's going to come back. So I don't live in St. Mary's. So I would personally rather not have to deal with the issue if folks could get it straight locally. If they could get it straight locally and have their discussions locally, like we're doing today, then I will be able to check the temperature and make a decision on what I have to do.
Okay, Mr.
So
White.
I think the best thing to do at this point, and I'm not going to make a rush decision right now, is to at least entertain the idea of possibly bringing it to a vote. I think that's the wisest thing to do, because this will come back again.
You say you can make a recommendation to the council for a vote? Is that what
That would be my decision. My decision tree right now is maybe the best possible choice now is to bring it to a vote, because it's going to come back.
Okay.
Whoever
But
it
the
is.
council has the option to say no.
They do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Take
White.
your time.
Larry White. Apparently then, the final decision is going to be yours as far as going to districts or not going to districts. So I feel that the majority of the people, and I've been to all 3 meetings now, and the first meeting there was several people that spoke in favor of districts. In the second meeting, they didn't show up. And this meeting, I've heard nobody say that they're in favor of districts at all. They've heard mention of plurality versus majority voting, which I don't want to get into. So let's just say the final decision is yours, and the council says, we don't want to put it to a vote in a referendum, which costs money anyway. Why, what, and how long will it take you to make your decision as to what to do with this?
I'll make a decision before session.
That's in
January.
My name is Kathy White, 402 Silver Point. And from what I've found tonight is almost 100% of the people are against district. And you're saying you're representing only a small minority, but you're not going to listen to your constituents, the majority?
Well, ma'am, we live in a republic. And unfortunately, I can't ignore the majority, but I, as an elected official, can't ignore the minority either.
Thank you.
Hi, Elaine Powersky, 571 Cardinal Circle East. If this really isn't a question for you, but I'm really proud of the fact that we have so many citizens who have actively really taken this on as a concern. They have admittedly said that they are not ready to really give recommendations to the council. I think to try to force them right now into deciding what's the best thing for St. Mary's is a little premature. I'd like to see this group be able to comfortably really evaluate the situation and come up with a really good recommendation to the council without feeling pressured that they have to make a decision by January. Best we would do is have a referendum in 2 years from now rather than a special election. I'd like to see those citizens have the time to really complete their evaluation. Because I know there is a tendency for recommending a change because the post situation is clumsy. And perhaps it is best to have 6 people running for 3 positions or some alternative. They just need a little more time, and I'd like to see them have the time without being pressured to complete it. Since they're voluntarily doing this, taking their time and welcoming more input as they go along.
And I share that assessment with you.
I would like to excuse me, get a little cooperation from some of the folks that are sitting here because I don't know the answer to this question. But I've lived here for quite some time. not compared to some of the folks that have been here their whole lives, but I don't remember an election in St. Mary's, even when the national issues were on the ballot, where the voter turnout was more than 40%. Can anybody tell me I'm misunderstanding? It might even be less than 40%. So, even on the best voter turnout in St. Mary's, if we sent this, I said earlier that I thought the way to answer this would be to send it to a vote, but since I sat back down, maybe I think that's not really the right answer, because you're not going to get a majority of the people in St. Mary's voting anyway. Even if it goes to a vote, it's going to be a vote that's settled by a minority of the
voter
voters.
Voter turnout is a disease. I don't think any system, whatever is proposed, cures that. It's voter apathy. I'm here to present the proposal, discuss how I arrive to that proposal. I'm not here to gin up voter turnout. That's not what this is about. But it is a problem. And I share that concern about voter apathy, but to me, that's not what this issue is about.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, but it certainly feels to me like you're crowding us into a corner.
Well, let me sort of describe the process so that you don't feel like you're in the dark about how it happens or why we're moving, you think, so fast. When this discussion started getting a little higher during the fall, late summer, early fall, and I said, okay, I'll just put out a proposal, because a lot of times when parties can't seem to talk about an issue, if you put out a proposal, it brings people to the table and get them to start talking, because that's what needs to happen, is the talk, and we've done that. And I think that's a good thing. So if I have to put that in January, then discussion like this needs to happen before January starts, okay? There's only 40 days that the session goes. We've got about 30 days before you have to get one bill out and into the Senate, and then it has to go through the committee process and the Senate gets vetted just like it does in the House. So there's not a lot of time, okay, if the community wants to do it. So if the community wants to do it or a decision wants to move forward on that, you have to keep the process in mind. So this proposal, this particular proposal, if it's something we move forward on, just hypothetically, if we move forward on it, I wouldn't recommend obviously voting on a referendum during the 2015 year, because that's a special election and that's an extra cost. That's something I tried to avoid when I came up with this proposal. So my recommendation is if the vote is something that comes forward, then to do it during the presidential primary in March of 2016. I think that's ample enough time for the community to sort of continue to debate the issue if that's something they want to do. That's the first Tuesday in March is the presidential primary in 2016, because the way I've written the current proposal, you would have to that would affect the next three posts coming up in 2016, if you put the vote for yes or no. So that's sort of describing the process and sort of how I'm thinking if you move forward on it, that's how you need to do it. You need public discussion before January starts. But if we move forward on that, my recommendation would be to vote in 2016 in March. That way you don't cost yourselves an extra election in 2015.
How much more public input do you need?
Well,
we've had three of these.
Right, we've had three discussions, but I think Elaine sort of articulated it the best. There needs to be a little bit more time, it looks like, for more people to talk about.
So are you committing to do that, or are you going to drop this?
It's something I'll consider. I mean, right now, I'm not going to make a yes or no decision right now, but
are you going to drop the bill
that
in
was a very
January?
persuasive argument that she made.
Are you going to drop the bill in January?
I don't know yet. I'm not going to make that decision right now.
What more input are you going to get between now and January?
Probably more folks will probably talk and ask.
So if 6 more people come and tell you
maybe
that they want to have district.
I think the other view is just as important as yours.
But why not here? I mean,
well, that's a good question.
Mr. Kennedy,
Maybe they didn't feel comfortable coming. I don't know. But that's that's the tough decisions you have to make as an elected official. You try to have to listen to everybody's input.
Mr. Spencer, one of the results, I think, of your action, and we've already made it clear that you're not ready to make a statement of whether you will or won't deliver this proposed House bill in this format or not in January. But assuming that you do, going down that path, and it going through the wheels of motion through the House and the Senate and what have you, and then again assuming that it gets voted upon, we basically have 2 years of dead air, dead time, inactivity, because it would be hard to get a group of citizens together to consider a better system when we have this cloud hanging over us, the referendum in 2016. So the consequence of that is substantial. It basically puts us at a standstill for 2 years, waiting for that referendum. And then if the referendum gets turned down, people are going to be so tired of talking about it, to get them excited again about looking at large with maybe a improved version of it would be very difficult. So those, I think, are consequences that we need to understand, and why it's so important that you take this cloud off of St. Mary's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to do one more.
I don't need a microphone. Representative Spencer, you're our state representative. From the state legislator's point of view, you have given home rule to this mayor and council and to the city. There is no compelling state interest in doing anything here. There are 10,000 voters. Hearing from 20, whether it's pro or con, should be way below your radar screen. This is a decision within the city. And frankly, I think your role as a state representative should be to do nothing unless there's a request from the council to do anything, because the state legislature has vested the authority to govern the city in this council. And their decision is what should rule, and the citizens of this city and this mayor and council should not be subject to an individual decision that you make when there's no real compelling state interest, which is your role as our state representative.
All right,
I'm kind of going to echo what he said, Representative Spencer, but if I interpret what you said to us right, maybe 10 to 20 people contacted you. I'm going to guess that's about right. I can almost point my finger at some of those people. I've lived here since 1987. I attend almost every council meeting. I haven't heard one of those people, except maybe Artie, but one of those people that have come before the council and said to their council, who are their governing body, not you, sir, but the council, I would like to change the way we vote. I would like to have district voting. Now, they didn't come to the council. I've never heard of them, yet you dragged them out of the woodwork someplace.
No,
Did you recommend they come to the council?
Anyone out of the woodwork.
Did you recommend they come to the council?
Actually, I did.
Well, good. They didn't take your recommendation.
But exactly. So what they did is they said, we'd rather come to you because we feel more comfortable talking to you about this issue. I said, well, that doesn't really need where it needs to start.
Well,
where it
okay.
needs
You
to
brought
start.
You brought this to the
So
city.
you're gonna let me
The
finish?
city.
You're gonna let me-
Go ahead.
Can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So when, as an elected official, when I get asked about a serious issue like this, I have to respond. So the response is let's just bring it to the table and have people discuss it. And that's what we've done.
Yes, and that's what you did. And we have discussed it.
Yeah.
And we have overwhelmingly said, we don't want it. Now, I'm not against, in fact, I would recommend that ultimately this is put to the vote of the people. That would be my recommendation. I'm not for it, but that would be my recommendation, because I always think this is the people who are voting and they should be given that choice. It's only my recommendation. But you, sir, I would like to have you stand up there and give us the pledge that until such time as our council and the citizens of this town do not do our job, that you lay off us, because we feel that we're under a threat, sir, and I don't like that feeling.
Well,
I want to represent me, not threaten me.
I apologize if you do feel threatened by my actions of being responsive to constituents that want the other system. I apologize for that.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry, it is time, and I think this has been, well, first of all, to be flexible and deal with this issue in a free form and here ad hoc, and thank you for the questions. I think it was informative. The feedback that we got today, Representative Spencer can take back and process. The fact that you're here, you're participating, all of you in the room. The council is always here, and we do listen, and we will get back to you, and we will meet in small groups if you want, particularly as Councilwoman Williams has said. We welcome that. We welcome the communication. I've been stopped on the road many times when I walk around my neighborhood, and I can hear the car slowing down, so I know that somebody wants to talk to me, and I really appreciate that, and I enjoy that. Sometimes get more done on the road than I do in the office, seriously. But your flexibility in dealing with this, answering the questions, and I suspect to the some of the comments about can they write you, your email address is available. I think any elected official welcomes that, and I would say that if you want to speak directly or if you want to email, I think Representative Spencer would be open to that. And we've got some decision making and some thinking to do at council to be able to respond to all of this. And I just want to thank you for being here and being participative, and to Marty and to Jim for doing the facilitating.
I want to make a quick apology. I made a reference about this being the senior center to my good buddy Chris. Chris is younger than me, so I felt like I could do that. There are only a few people in here that are older than me. I'm looking at 70 in a couple of years. And I've been in the long-term care business, was in the long-term care business for over 30 years. I respect elderly people, and I certainly didn't mean to impugn anyone's age and wisdom that's certainly beyond mine. And the answer to the question about the voter turnout in St. Mary's, and I think Ms. Norris, you may verify this, in 1960, the presidential election, Kennedy Nixon, probably per eligible voters, turned out the highest percentage that this community has ever seen. I don't remember any other election that people expressed any more interest in. And I don't know if there were any local races involved at that particular time. I'm pretty sure there might have been, but it takes a national issue or something to bring that out. But as moderator of these past 3 meetings, thank you very much for your time and support and attention.
Thank you, everybody.